Welcome to Hot Takes on the Lake. I'm Josh, joined here by your host, Nick. We are two lifelong Browns fans, and we are talking about every single Browns game this season. Today, we are talking about the Cleveland Browns going to Baltimore to take on the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens sit at 3-3. The Browns are now 2-4 after dropping their last three, losing their last 4 out of 5 games. Not looking good for Cleveland in the last few weeks, and obviously, Baltimore is the heavy favorite right now for this game on Sunday, and even though they're only a game ahead of us on the schedule at 3-3, it is a little bit hard to argue. Lamar Jackson having another great year, already thrown 13 touchdowns to 6 interceptions and over 1,200 yards. And he's also, once again, their leading rusher so far with over 450 rushing yards and a couple of touchdowns. Their leading receiver is actually tight end Mark Andrews, who has 5 touchdowns on the year. There's already been a lot of banged up Browns players this week in practice. I know a lot of them have sat out. Some of them are probably just because they're veteran players, but there's a lot like Clowney, Ward, Teller, who are all questionable for the game. So it's really not looking great. But Nick, what's your initial impression? Do you have any hope at all going into this game against Baltimore?
I wish I had a more positive outlook for this game, but unfortunately, just from obviously, the defensive issues that have just been plaguing this defense and seeming to get worse and worse after each week, and letting guys. I mean, this is like the first week we're facing a legit elite quarterback, and you've seen what you know, we still lost to Marcus Mariota, where he he completed 7 passes. You let Bailey Zappi, who might have a bright future, but I mean, he is a backup quarterback right now for Mac Jones, and he just completely torched you last week. You let an old man like Joe Flacco come back with down 2 scores with less than 2 minutes left on the clock. And obviously Lamar Jackson is a great quarterback. I still see people, really get on him about his throwing ability. I think he's a good passer. Obviously, he's not like, a Josh Allen type of guy. That's not his style. But I mean, he is just one of those guys that you have to game plan your entire defensive scheme around. He can impact the game in so many different ways. And I mean, not just throwing the ball, just on the ground. And we've shown our inability to stop the run, whether it's an elite running back or if it's Lamar Jackson or if it's just some random guy off the practice squad like in Atlanta. We're just going to be, giving up big running games to pretty much anybody we face, it seems like this season. So from that aspect, defensively, I think this will be, a pretty, I don't know. It's a pretty big task. I don't imagine the Browns will solve all of their problems that they've had, within the next couple of days and, really get up for this game.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's an important game for a lot of reasons. I mean, if you have any hope for the Browns long term this season, this game really is kind of season on the line. I know it seems silly to say that in week 7, but it's true. I mean, really the only thing we can hang our hats on right now is that our division isn't that great. Baltimore leads the division at 3-3, so there's no team thus far with a winning record in our division, and our only division game is one of our wins when we beat the Steelers. So this game, we could, if we pull out the victory here, we could lead the division at 3-4 with 2-0 in our division. And even though leading the division at 3-4 isn't anything that looks that great, it's still leading the division nonetheless. And obviously, then the confidence going into your second division game in a row next week against the Bengals. In division games, like, I know it's cliche, but they just are more important. Like, it just is what it is. They're more important than your non-division games, the same way that AFC conference opponent games are more important than your NFC conference opponent games. I mean, because of the way the playoff seeding breaks down, these are the most important games, and I wish we weren't going into it on the worst stretch we've had this year. But that's the reality we have to face, and at this point, us beating the Ravens does seem like a long shot. But I will just say, even with all of our problems, I don't think our team right now is worse than the team we've had the last couple of years in many ways. It's not like we've gotten worse. We just have a lot of the same issues. But we've been able to somehow, stick around with the Ravens every time we play them. We seem to at least always get one win over them in the season. I think it's been a few years since we got swept by them, and I know we have Jacoby Brissett in there who played not well at all last week, but it's not like the Ravens are used to coming in and trouncing us. Like, they do not, do well against our defense, and I'm not sure why exactly that is.
Yeah, and even I mean, we lost that heartbreaker. I think it was last year where Lamar Jackson was basically just had to go take a shit, and then their backup came in, and then I think their third string had to come in, and then Lamar Jackson, of course, comes in. Next play, they score a go-ahead touchdown. Um, so there's been definitely a lot of close games in recent years. And yeah, I mean the Ravens obviously, like you said, they're 3-3, and they're only 1-2 at home, so they're not a perfect team. I personally don't think much of the Giants. I don't know. I just don't really believe in them, especially with their quarterback situation. And they still, were able to beat the Ravens last week. So, and I mean, they're kind of just like us, like against Miami. They gave up a lot of points in the fourth quarter and really blew that game as well. So, they're not a perfect team by any stretch. But like you said, I mean, everybody seems to play harder. They always get up for an in division game, and it is important. Obviously, we didn't pick the Browns to win the playoffs, or excuse me, to get to the playoffs. Um, the AFC is a tough conference for sure, probably the tougher of the two, I would say. But still, if you can perform well in your division, regardless, I mean, that's still especially a competitive division like the AFC North. Besides the Browns, historically, it always seems like you know obviously Pittsburgh and Baltimore are up there. Cincinnati, they may have like a down year or two, but they're always right there in the mix as well. So these games are always important, but I just think with the issues that have been going on, and the stuff that I've been hearing, or excuse me, seeing on Twitter at least today and yesterday, just with guys like John Johnson and Joe Batonio saying like it's not just like showing up for practice and then you go home. It's like no, they're pretty much saying like guys are not putting in that extra work, especially when the clock is off. And I'm sorry, but you're an NFL player, you get paid that much money. You can't just, all right, I did practice, whatever, I'll be fine for the game. It's like, no, you have to really do your research. There's a lot that goes into it, a lot that you have to know. And if you don't, then you're going to get the result that we see every week: blown coverages, guys taking just bad angles on run plays, giving up big gains. Um, so yeah, I hope that maybe it's not great that they're you know there's already issues coming out, but maybe guys will respond to that. Maybe they don't like to be not necessarily thrown under the bus, but you need somebody in that locker room to hold somebody accountable. I feel like we really miss out. Um, granted, it wasn't perfect when Jarvis Landry was here, but a guy like that who, for better or worse, will get in your face and be like, you need to do your job, and we need a vocal leader who will also back it up on the field. I feel like a lot of guys will talk that talk, but then not not show up on the field either. They'll kind of fall into the same habits as everybody else. So I think that's what the Browns are desperately in need for, is just a leader that, obviously leads by example and puts in that extra work. Make sure the other guys, if they're falling down, and bring them up to speed, because it's a team sport. If one guy is not doing his job, it can still affect the entire team and the entire defense or the entire offense, whatever it may be. Um, so that's really what I'm concerned about, is guys just not um, even not giving the effort that they need to, and obviously just not knowing what to do and not putting that extra work to really be on top of your game, because if not, you're going to get exposed like we've been seeing week after week.
Yeah, and what's really wild to me is, we're like you look at us eye test watching the games versus looking at our stats, and they're not all completely opposite, but we are the number 4 offense in the league, yardage wise, and points per game are also very high, top 10 in the league. And then when you look at our defensive stats, we are not the worst defense in the league statistically. I mean, we're not even in the bottom 10 when it comes to yards allowed, which the Ravens are, by the way. The Ravens allow more pass yardage than us per game by a lot. And then we do allow more rushing yards than them, but it's not anything terrible. So it is really surprising when you look at the stats that it doesn't show as much as you think it would. But I think that's because of the competition we've been up against. Like you said, with going up against Lamar Jackson. I mean, we haven't really faced that good of a team outside of the Chargers, and the Chargers really didn't play that well against us, and they haven't just like played that well in general. So I don't know what's really going on with them for the most part this year. Statistically, they were doing pretty good earlier in the year, but they've kind of fallen off. So I think that if the flaws that we think are there from watching the games don't improve, we're going to start to see that show up, in the statistics. Because I feel like so far this year, we haven't played well, but our competition has allowed us to kind of stick around. I think last week was that first sign of like, oh, wow, we might not be really that competitive of a team, especially defensively, even though last week I blamed much more on the offense. Overall, obviously you have to admit defensively, it seems like we're not very competitive.
Yeah, and I do apologize for getting Justin Herbert. Obviously, he is an elite quarterback, but I mean, we did get very lucky that he underperformed, to what he's capable of doing in that game. Um, but yeah, and I don't know. That's what I'm worried about. Like I said before, and we both have said it. The first 4 to 5 weeks were really an opportunity to put some good wins together. But now you're going into the meat of the schedule, especially with these in division games. If the losses still pile up, you see guys maybe not giving a plus effort right now. I mean, just imagine if we lose 3 to 4 straight. I mean, I can't imagine how much worse it's going to get. Um, and I hope that it's not a situation where guys aren't really giving that much effort because they're just waiting for Deshaun Watson to get here, and they're like, all right, well, I mean, it's Brissett. He's going to play, the best of his ability, but I mean, I don't really expect much. So let's just kind of coast for the first 10, 11 weeks. And then when Deshaun gets back, then we'll kick it on. It's like, I really hope that's not what's going on because, I don't expect Deshaun Watson to be elite when he comes back. There's going to be some growing pains for sure. Um, and why people would think or why players would think that it's just magically going to turn around as soon as he steps on the field. No, I mean, and obviously Deshaun Watson can't do everything when he gets back. I mean, he's not going to be able to, not blow coverages and have guys wide open on defense. He's not going to be able to, play better run defense either. So everything's not going to be perfect when he comes back and when he's healthy. So I'm hoping that's not the case, that guys are just coasting. A guy like Jadeveon Clowney, who again sat out this week. I know he banged up his ankle, but I mean, that's another guy who really came back this year and flat out said it because Deshaun Watson was here. He would probably follow Deshaun Watson wherever he would have gone. So I don't want to sit here and say that he's just he's not giving his effort. He could have played. He's just sitting out because Watson's not playing. We're not playing well. I mean, I don't want to go that far, but again, I mean, especially this is such a young team. This is one of the youngest teams in the league. And when you have a veteran guy like that, even regardless if, maybe that's kind of his MO, that's his reputation, that he's not going to give maximum effort. I mean, just how toxic the locker room seems to be now, with guys, calling players out, saying they're not studying hard enough. They're not putting the extra work in. That's just a really bad example for a veteran guy to kind of display that. So I'm hoping that's not happening. It's just a mess that there's so many issues, that have already been coming out, and we're only 7 weeks into the year. And it seemed, at least from the outside, that before it was, I don't care what anybody says, OBJ is the problem. If we just get him out of here, then the team will really come together. The team will play better. Well, he's gone. Oh, Baker Mayfield really is the problem. Guys didn't like Baker Mayfield. They didn't like his attitude. He was a problem. He's not a leader. Whatever. He's gone too. So, and there's still issues there. So it really is just a culture change that needs to happen. And unfortunately, we just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and now it's Stefanski. Like there's no Baker
Yeah,
or OBJ to
exactly.
blame. So now it's Stefanski and his culture. It's like, well, if he is the problem, wouldn't it have been him the whole time? Like, that he's been here. And I'm always very tentative to, hesitant to shit on Stefanski or say things that we just can't prove. Like, I'm okay with saying his play calls are bad if I think they're bad, or like I don't like his press conferences or whatever. But it's like to try to, I just don't feel comfortable blaming the culture of the team on him, because I don't know. I'm not there. You know what I mean? So I don't know what it is, and I don't know what any culture of any locker room is from their head coach, to be honest. So I don't know if that is the case or not, but I definitely see that being the common theme that people are saying online. To be a little bit positive, I just want to, remind everyone the one thing at least we can hang our head on is Nick Chubb. Yet again, just having another excellent year. And I know we still complain, oh, we're not running enough in the fourth quarter. We're not running when we need to, and that's all valid. But to just take a second and appreciate, I mean, this dude is leading the league in rushing yards, not just by a little bit. He has over 40 yards, over 30 yards on Saquon Barkley, who's in second place for the year. And then after that, it's an over 130-yard drop-off to the number 3 running back, Josh Jacobs. Like, right now, it's literally Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley and then everyone else in the league. And it's not just a volume stat either. I mean, Nick Chubb has run it the second most next to Barkley, but he also is the highest in average for running back, the most yards, 20-plus yard runs so far this season with 7, most rushing touchdowns with 7. Like, he is just dominating the league from a running back perspective, and you got to give credit to our offensive line as well, who, when they're healthy, before we got so banged up in that last game, they were doing really great this year, both with blocking for the run and keeping the sacks down on Jacoby. So we at least have that, and I feel like with that foundation, we're not going to get blown out a lot. I think what happened last week, we're not going to see a ton of, hopefully. I think we're going to see close games, whether it's low scoring or high scoring, because we at least have that foundation that we can kind of count on every week.
I think also not abandoning the run too early in the game will keep us in games a lot more. And that's another thing that's been so frustrating is obviously I think people finally have come around to realize that, yeah, Nick Chubb is the best pure runner in the league. He is the best running back in the league from that standpoint. Um, but I mean, what do you get? 12 carries last week? I mean, that is
Yeah,
just
last week was
completely
bad, yeah.
that's completely unacceptable. I mean, even going into this year, we were both of the mindset that, you know, just run the hell out of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I mean, obviously, yeah, you can't run it every single play, but I mean, this was definitely the year where you just, pound it out with them, keep yourself in a game. Obviously, Brissett for the first couple of weeks outplayed our expectations. Now it's going to come back to earth. The interceptions are piling up now. And some of the decision making, is lacking. So that's really when you need to rely on your stud running back and your good offensive line. I mean, I haven't heard a negative thing about Jedrick Wills since like the second week when everyone was trashing him on Twitter. He's been playing great. I mean, obviously we've been banged up too. Teller got banged up. Conklin is always hurt. It seems like we have not a rookie center, but a center who was not our starter going
Yeah.
into this year because of Nick Harris getting injured. So the offensive line has been playing well, and like you said, keeping the sacks down as well it has been a big factor. But yeah, that's another thing that's just it's so frustrating. It's like, and that's one of the things that we talk about all the time is really how the Browns can succeed with just this limited quarterback play is controlling the pace of the game. And we were down 10 minutes last week. We had like 25 to New England's 35. I mean, I think that's completely flipped if we don't abandon the run too early and let Chubb and Hunt really do their thing behind that offensive line and kind of lead the offense. So that's what's been really concerning is just, it seems like they're still running the type of offense as if we had, Deshaun Watson or like an elite quarterback, which is really concerning to me. I just don't understand that.
Yeah, and I think, I do want to hope that last week was just a bad week, not the usual, and I don't think it will be and I'm talking about from the perspective of Nick Chubb running it 12 times. I'm one to think like even if you're down 2 scores, even if you're down 17 points, still run the ball if that's what you're good at, is unless you're like in a 4 minute scenario, right? I mean, you're midway through the third quarter. I don't care how much you're down, still run it. But I mean, it got to a point last week where we were down by so much. Not only did I understand not running it, I also didn't want to risk Nick Chubb, because it's like you get into the 1% chance of winning or less than 1% chance of winning. Maybe it's not smart to be risking him, just for, even though that's your best shot. So I hope that's just an aberration and we get back to his usual production this week, which I think we will. Um, Another stat I think is actually just pretty funny, that we were in the top three in the league. If you just were to take a guess, Nick, so far this year, how many times do you think the Browns have gone for it on fourth down?
Hmm. Let's see. We played about 6 games, and I would say probably at least 3 times per game. So I'm gonna say about 20.
Close. We didn't quite reach 20. There's only one team in the league that's over 20, and that's the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh my
They've
God.
done it 22 times. I mean, that makes sense knowing their team. But we're number three. We've done
Yeah.
it 15 times. So I did
Jesus.
not think, I mean, thinking about the games, it's like I don't remember going for it that much. But the good news is that we've successful 60% of the time, or we're 9 out of 15, so we're actually one of the best teams on fourth down, and on third down we actually are pretty good as well. So offensively we've been able to convert on those downs, and I hope that that continues, because I see this being a game against the Ravens this week where I would not be surprised to go for it on fourth down 2, 3, maybe even 4 times, because unless our defense really steps up, I think we're going to have a shootout if we want to win. And I know a lot of times Browns fans, not just Browns fans, football fans in general, will always fall back on like, oh, take the points. You need to take the points, for field goals and everything. And I understand that. But if Kevin Stefanski wants to go for it on fourth down more often than not this game, I'm not going to blame him. This is a game where you need touchdowns. You are not going to beat the Ravens with field goals, especially when they have Justin Tucker. But I don't even think they're going to need him that much, because I think they're going to be scoring a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is just play calling at the right time. I mean, if it's third down and one, or third down and two, yes, obviously it's common sense to give the ball to Nick Chubb. Yes, the defense is going to expect that, but I will gladly live and die on the back of Nick Chubb, honestly. I mean, no one's going to be, looking at you sideways and questioning your play calling if like, well, why did you give it to him? Why did you give it to the
Yeah.
best running back in the league? It's like, no one's going to question you on that. They're going to question you if you just take a deep shot to like Harrison Bryant or Peoples Jones when he's like 2 yards out of bounds and turn the ball over. So I really think just playing smart and not getting cute in situations like that. Again, against their good team that Baltimore has been underperforming, but they're still a talented team on both sides of the ball. That's going to come back to cost you. Especially like you said, we've gone for it 15 times on fourth down. You need to convert those, and I think calling smart plays and calling the right plays in that situation will help out a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even this is a game where if going for it on fourth down, it's always risky. But if you're past the 50, let's say we're in a third down and one, like I even wouldn't hate play action on third and one if it means you're running it on fourth down. You know what I mean? Or I always say it's funny, because it seems like every time we're at the goal line, I always think like no fan is going to, which at the end of the day, does it matter if fans are going to get mad? I don't know. But like, I always just think like no one is going to complain if you go to the goal line and you run it 4 times up the middle with Nick Chubb and he can't get in one of those 4 times. Like, no one is going to think that you did the wrong thing. But we tend to do the opposite, and people complain because we get to the goal line and then we pass it 4 times and can't get in, or 3 of the 4 times, and you're like, what are you doing? It's those
Yeah.
type of common sense things that even the normal fan can kind of point out and be like, yeah, that's not the way to do it. I mean, you see so many teams when they get in the goal line situation run the ball and score, and it's like it's not like teams can't run the ball and score in the goal line. More often than not, you see them overthink it and try to throw the ball and end up either turning it over or having to settle for a field goal. That's one of the biggest head scratchers I always have watching any football game, not just the Browns, is how often teams want to throw it in the goal line scenario. I mean, obviously, most infamously, right, the Super Bowl with the Seahawks, right? So it's always been a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, I mean, and I think if you have the ball on the 1 yard line or within the two, and you run the ball 4 straight times with Nick Chubb and this offensive line, then you just have to look at them. I mean, no one's going to be looking at the coach like, oh, that was a stupid play call. And no, it's stupid when you roll Jacoby Brissett out, who, and somehow has a few plays this year where he just makes guys miss and is able to run for a touchdown or at least make a couple guys miss to avoid the sack. But I mean, you do that if you have a Lamar Jackson, if you have Deshaun Watson out there, or even like Josh Allen, who's a great runner. That I can understand, but just rolling Brissett out, to the short side of the field where Amari Cooper is the only guy out there, and if he's covered, then he's got nobody else. Stuff like that just makes me just want me to flip the table. It's so frustrating. Again, no one's gonna be calling for your job and just freaking out if you give the ball to the best running back. It really doesn't have to be that hard, and I think that's unfortunately the biggest criticism I have of Stefanski. Where again, I just think he gets too cute, and I think he's like, oh, they're gonna expect this, so I'm gonna try to outsmart him, but it never seems to really work out. I think sometimes when you have elite talent in certain situations, yes, it's a pretty obvious you're going to use him. Yes, but I mean, make him stop it. Honestly, if Nick Chubb and this offensive line can't get you 1 yard, then blame. Then it's on them. Really, it's not you for calling that play.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And the one good thing about the Ravens, they have given up uh, some of the most first downs defensively in the league so far this year. They are the top three teams, or bottom three, depending on how you look at it, of giving up first downs from a defensive perspective. Like I said, they actually have given up more pass yards allowed than we have by a lot, by over 40 yards per game. So their defense is not, at least statistically from looking at it, not the best in the world either. And I think that's another reason we in the past have been able to hang around with them. But we can't, we don't have, unfortunately, the quarterback to be able to think that we're just going to go in there and throw all around on him. I mean, Jacoby's okay, but he's not, a huge cannon guy. I mean, we've seen him overthrow and underthrow so many potential big plays already this year. So I really am leaning on Nick Chubb a lot this game, and if he has a really good game, I think that could keep us in it. But I just fear I see myself watching the game and us being in that fourth quarter scenario where Jacoby has to drive down the field and throwing another pick. I mean, I could just see it happening again. Or even we score and then, like we have in past years, give the Ravens too much time and we have no resistance for them to drive down and win with a field goal. I mean, the one thing our defense is good at is goal line stands. Beyond that, we will let you drive all the way down the field, until you get into the red zone. But they don't even need to be in the red zone for Justin Tucker. They just need to be past the 50. So, yeah, I'm very frightful of this game. But at the end of the day, we always have exciting games with the Ravens, whether it's because it's a huge disaster and both teams have 7 turnovers or something, or it's just a really good shootout like the one you mentioned. We always seem to have just entertaining games with them at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was Mary Kay Cabot. She was on. I think she was on the Ken Carmen show either yesterday or this morning, where she was like, she said a crazy stat. It was like, I think Jacoby Brissett has gone downfield the same amount of times as Josh Allen has. It's like
What?
it just completely blew my mind. Obviously, Josh Allen's touchdown to interception ratio was way better than Brissett's, of course, but like that's another thing. It's like Brissett has shown that his deep ball accuracy is just going to be all over the place. If he doesn't completely underthrow somebody, it's going to be a play like to Njoku last week, where if he gets it in stride, that's a walk-in touchdown for Njoku. But he had to stop a little bit and then gets tackled out of bounds. Again, still a 30-yard gain, but just plays like that. I mean, it just really, you left points on the board. I can't remember if we scored on that drive, anyways. So from that aspect, I think the first couple of weeks, what we were doing with Brissett was, not taking too many deep shots down the field, getting guys like Njoku, like Cooper open. They did a good job bottling him up last week. That's going to be a good and important thing to do is get him involved early. Peoples Jones has a great catch ratio this year. He's been playing well. They Harrison Bryant is always going to get his targets as well. Get Kareem Hunt involved in the passing game too, especially if they're dialing up a lot of blitzes. Get Kareem Hunt out there on some screenplays. I feel like we always hear him talked about as this great receiving running back, which he is, but it just seems like, especially this year, we haven't utilized him that much in that aspect. So I think this would be a great week to get him involved in the passing game early as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the screen game is just again something that I don't understand why we don't utilize more. Like we'll never do a screenplay. We'll let the other team have 4 or 5 successful screenplays on us, but we'll
For
never
30-yard gains too.
yeah, we'll never run a screenplay, and then when we do, we try throwing it to Nick Chubb, or we throw it to Harrison Bryant or something in a screen. Like it's
Yeah.
just it baffles me. We have literally who could probably be the one of the top 5 at least screen backs in the league. We just don't use him for that. Like we really only ever use him for when Nick Chubb is tired or in shotgun positions, which he is good in those positions too. But I don't know. That one is a head scratcher for me too. So we'll see how much he gets involved this week. I do think if I'm a defensive player though for the Browns, especially a secondary player, this is a week where I hope they are really putting in the work because Lamar throws a lot of picks. He is not secure with the football. I mean, he has 6 so far already this year. That's 1 per week on average, and we always pick him off. It seems like he can't get through a game against the Browns, even when they beat us. They can't get through a game without him throwing at least 2 interceptions. So that's something that I think our defense hopefully will be able to step up and make some plays because we've had like basically no help. Like we've had so little help from the defense in turning the ball over. I'm gonna go actually pull up that stat because I could be wrong, but just from my memory, it seems like we never get the turnovers that can help our offense. So I'll look that up. But that's what I'm looking for too.
Yeah, I'm gonna be looking forward to just, like I said, establishing the run early, not giving up on it. Even if Baltimore goes up by 14 early, just don't abandon it because you can't rely on this passing game. You just can't, unfortunately. And defensively, obviously Mark Andrews is Lamar Jackson's favorite target out there.
Mm-hmm.
He's a dangerous tight end, so you just don't let him get open. I mean, if you have tight coverage on him and he beats you 1-on-1 for a ball, then fine. But just don't you just can't let these good teams just have wide open guys downfield. It's inexcusable. So that's what I'm going to be looking for most is hopefully we're able to finally just at least cover guys. Like I said, if a guy beats you, then fine, okay. But just the amount of confusion that I've seen in this secondary already is just it's mind-boggling. It really is.
Yeah, and I was just looking it up right now, and I am correct. We only have 2 interceptions all year, which is
Great.
not only is that one of the worst in the league. That's like I didn't even think it was that low. I thought
I'm trying to think. I know Denzel had one in the Atlanta game. I can't remember the other
mm-hmm.
one.
Neither can I. I mean, that just goes to show. uh,
Oh, no, I was gonna say I thought we picked off Baker Mayfield, but I don't think we did.
we may have actually. I think I might remember. But yeah,
Maybe.
only 2 all year so far, and then 3 fumbles for 5 takeaways, one of the lowest in the league. Our turnover differential, which isn't all the defense's fault, but the differential is -3, which is again one of the worst in the league. I mean, the Panthers are at -2. Like that's where we're talking at right now. Then you got the Ravens on the other hand, +4 differential. They have 12 takeaways. 8 of those are interceptions. So that scares me as well. I mean, they have a lot of turnovers, but at the same time, they also take away the ball to where they're also top 3 in the league when it comes to the differential. So that is scary for sure. That could be going. I mean, we had that game I talked about. Like I think it was last year where I think we each had like 4 turnovers at least, like each team. It was just like back and
Yeah.
forth, so that could happen for sure. This is just a side note, but the Vikings and Ravens are at +4, and then the Philadelphia Eagles are just +12 differential. Like that's just insane.
God.
That's why they're undefeated. I mean, literally, that stat is why is why you're undefeated. But yeah, I guess I'll give my prediction first. I am gonna go with the Ravens this time. I will hopefully be able to predict the Browns at home later on this season when we have Deshaun Watson and all of those things. But for now, I'm going to go with the Ravens. But I think the Browns are going to stay in it. I don't think it's going to be a huge blowout like last week. So I'm going to go 24-21 Ravens, and I think it's going to come down to the end.
I wish I was that optimistic. I think again, just based off that stat you gave, I mean, if Brissett has to come out there and throw over 40 times again, I mean, and again, we just give Nick Chubb less than less than 20 carries is egregious. I mean, 20 to 25 really should be the bare minimum for Nick Chubb, especially in this game against that defense. So I think we might be able to keep it close early. Again, like you said, Lamar isn't always the safest with the ball. So maybe we'll get an interception out of it, keep it close. But I just think in the end, there's just too many holes on that defense, too much confusion out there, and I think it's just going to cost us against a guy like Lamar Jackson. So I'm going to go Baltimore 34, Browns 23. Again, and it might not even be look like that big of a blowout, but I mean, I just think I just don't trust the defense. I'm sorry. I think last week might have been not an anomaly on offense, but maybe we just had a bad play calling, had a bad game plan. Like I said, abandoned the run too early. Really just tried to force the passing game to get back into the game. So I think if we can correct that, we'll be okay, at least on offense. But defensively, God, it just scares me. And I don't even know if Denzel Ward's going to be playing this week again. I don't know
Yeah.
what the status is on his concussion. I don't know if Clowney's going to be playing. Garrett has been banged up. He re-injured that shoulder. Luckily, it's not torn or anything from that car wreck. So he's banged up. He's obviously he's double teamed pretty much every play. So it's going to be tough for him to get his anyways. So just based on the defense, I don't have high hopes for this game, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean that's completely fair. I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm just hoping for an exciting game at the end of the day. And after, not even just last week, but really all three of these losses, none of them have really even been that exciting to watch. So I feel
Yeah.
like our only exciting game of the year was week one, which we almost lost, but we ended up winning, that game, and it was exciting. So I'm just hoping for that again,
Yeah.
at least if we can get some good games out of this stretch. If we're not going to win many of them. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's going to be it for our thoughts on the game this week. We're not going to be streaming the game this week, but we will be setting one up in the coming weeks. So whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform, make sure to subscribe so you can hear all of our recaps and previews of all of the games this year, and follow us here on Hot Takes on the Lake.
Yeah. Thank you guys again for watching and listening wherever you do. You can follow us on Twitter at Hot Takes 216. Although the social media is Hot Takes on the Lake. Yeah, we'll talk to you guys. Hopefully we'll have some better news for you. But it's a big game for the Browns, so we'll see if they come prepared for it. So enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you guys later.